Relay, we're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. An article from out of Belgium detailing a few words from Shin to Delphine Persoon, who she will be challenging late next month. In so many words, she's vowing to kill Delphine Persoon. On Sunday, May 28th, Delphine Persoon, a former WBC lightweight champion, will box a decisive fight at Sports Center Benny in Tolhort, which, if won, entitles her to a confrontation with Alicia Baumgartner. With the title of WBC Gold in the super featherweight at stake, only the South Korean Shin, 29 years old, 15 matches won with only one loss, stands in her way. Because Persoon team assures that this hurdle can be overcome,
See about that.
Delphine Persoon herself was not impressed with a few questions that Shin answered via Skype during the press conference in sponsor Signs Buildings on Thursday evening. I've seen Delphine Persoon's fight against Katie Taylor. I was not impressed, and I am sure I will beat her. I will kill you, she cried, making the familiar gesture of the knife across the neck with her hand. I will make South Korea proud of me and make boxing popular in my country. Delphine Persoon had probably thought about it, but still admitted that after viewing some images of camps of Shin, she realizes that she is faced with a tough assignment. She is a tough aunt, says the police inspector. She is always boxing offensively, and physically, she seems as strong as I am. I think, yes, it can be a real battle.
Delphine Persoon would be the seasoned veteran here. Seasoned, yes, but that doesn't mean that Shin is green around the gills. She's pretty experienced herself.
Yes, it could be a real battle of attrition in which my experience can be the deciding factor. Besides, she's not just third in the WBC World Super Featherweight rankings.
Not for no reason.
Shin sports a professional record of 15 wins with 1 loss, 3 draws,
8 knockouts.
having never been knocked out in 19 professional contests, 19 professional bouts. This ain't no novice. This ain't no squirrely amateur. Shin has been around the block. Even if Delphine Persoon is a lot more experienced than she is,
There is such a thing as too much experience.
Delphine's 38 years old. She's something like 9 years older than Shin. And Shin is just as rough and tumble, just as physical, and just as mean-spirited as Delphine Persoon, just 9 years younger.
9 years younger than Delphine. Delphine, who sports a professional record of 47 wins with 3 losses, no draws, 19 knockouts, having only ever been knocked out once.
Just once in 50 professional contests, 50 professional bouts, and Delphine Persoon has been there and done that with many of the who's who boxers in the sport of boxing in the last couple of years.
Delphine saw action 2 times last year and 2 times the year before that, so she ain't got no ring rust she needs to shake off.
She was last in action in November of last year in the Middle East opposite the ring, Ikram Kirwat, a fight that was ruled a no contest after Delphine Persoon knocked her down and hit her while she was down.
Delphine's lucky she didn't get disqualified for that, because she could have.
Delphine, who saw action 2 times last year to Shin, who was a bit more busier, she fought 4 times last year and has already seen action once this year, in February.
An active fighter is a sharp fighter.
Shin, she's about as sharp as she can be, having fought 4 times last year and once this year.
It's now or never.
Shin, for the most part, has been pouncing on local girls from her region of the world. This will be the first time, I think the first time, that she faces a world-class opponent, a former champion.
Big step up in class.
At what is perhaps the most opportune time to take on Delphine Persoon, one of the more fearsome punchers the sport of women's boxing has seen in recent memory. She's been a threat to almost anyone and everyone at or around these weights for years. And if you know anything about Delphine, you'll notice similarities between her and Shin.
They're both pressure fighters.
And they're both volume punchers with great engines, the both of them, both Delphine and Shin, with the difference being that Shin is 9 years younger than Delphine.
They're both physical fighters.
The kind of fighters that wear on the woman opposite the rings physicality, as it takes a certain level of physicality to hang in there with either Shin or Delphine Persoon. It's either going to test the fighter's punching power, whether or not they can get some respect, or it's going to test their cardio, whether or not they're able to keep up.
So much time is spent talking about form and function when plain old physicality can make for a hard fight. Plain old physicality can make for a long night.
Delphine Persoon, for years now, has been quite the physical specimen, but the same can be said for Bomire Shin.
Like they're cut from the same cloth.
Bomire Shin, in action, seems just as, if not more mean-spirited than Delphine Persoon. And Delphine Persoon was in her prime. And even here today, in the latter stages of her career at this advanced age, she's still a spiteful puncher.
But does she still have what it takes to share the ring with a spiteful puncher? Like she did years ago opposite the ring, Maiva Hamadouche. That was a physically taxing, grueling fight at 38 years old.
Yeah, normally Delphine Persoon's the aggressor. Normally she's the biggest puncher in the room and the more prolific puncher, but this time
she's facing an opponent just like herself, the kind of fighter that's going to fight fire with fire.
She wants to give Delphine Persoon a physical fight just as much as Delphine wants to give her one.
Delphine Persoon's going to have home field advantage. This fight is set to take place in her native Belgium.
That communicates is that in the event that there are close rounds, where it's hard to separate the fighters, where it's hard to get a gauge on who wins a round, in all likelihood, Delphine Persoon will get consideration.
She's got that working for her. She's a tough old bird.
She's got a long night in front of her, and a live one. In men's heavyweight news, on the heels of his first professional loss, Joyce says news is coming soon on the next fight, open to doing a Zhilei Zhang rematch. And what that communicates to me is that while he's open to it, may not be next, which is what I thought.
The more lucrative option for Joyce, and perhaps the more sensible one, is a fight with Dillian Veit.
We had a meeting with the Warrens, so there will be some news coming out soon about his next fight. Joyce told Sky Sports at the Sports Industry Awards, it would be good to avenge that loss to Zhang. A few more rounds and no black eye, and I think I would have still been in the fight, and I thought I would start to get to him in the later rounds. But respect to him. He's a great opponent and obviously did the business. It was a tough night. It was a very frustrating, but one to avenge. Hopefully we'll do it again. However, Joyce believes a rematch with Zhang does not necessarily have to be the next contest.
It doesn't.
In an era of boxing where rematch clauses are all the rage, it is felt in some circles that a rematch for this fight, it would be unnecessary.
And for Joe, ill-advised. He can't change but so much from one fight to the next.
There are plenty of options. It's not the be-all and end-all to do the rematch next, Joyce said. I was in that great position and I didn't really need to take that fight, but it's something I'd like to avenge and get back in the driver's seat and move on to bigger and better fights. I don't regret taking it. It's just a part of the story. I lost my O, but I'll still continue and be in some great fights. There's plenty of different options. We'll just have to wait and see.
I wonder how Anthony Joshua's critics would view Joyce for foregoing an immediate rematch, foregoing a second fight to fight someone else.
When Anthony lost to Andy Ruiz, he didn't decide to go fight somebody else in the mean-in-between time. He ran to the rematch, to the second fight. The same applies to the Usyk fight.
If Joe don't fight Zhilei Zhang next, does that communicate weakness?
You have to wonder how hypercritical people like to be when it comes to AJ. Would they be critical of Joe if he skipped out on this rematch?
Rematch with Zhang. Zhilei Zhang's trainer says we still haven't seen the best of Zhilei Zhang. The rematch would only get worse for Joyce.
The rematch with Zhang. Zhilei Zhang was exciting and enjoyed himself in their fight, but Zhilei didn't get into details of the game plan, George told BoxingScene.com. He didn't show you everything he had. This is the best people have seen Zhilei fight, but we still haven't seen the best of Zhilei Zhang. The rematch would only get worse for Joyce.
Probably.
Joyce, he stays in character. He's a mid-range to inside pressure fighter, and that's worked for him up until this point, because that's one of those things that works right up until it doesn't.
That's what that is.
You pride yourself on your reputation, your ability to take a punch, a clean punch, a flush shot. That'll work for a while, up until it doesn't. That'll catch up to you.
It was Joyce's busted eye that made the referee wave this thing off. But say he didn't wave it off. You saw how he was taking those backhands, those straight left hands from Zhilei Zhang.
There's not much that he can do. Maybe he can find a new trainer, but there's not much that he can do. Joe is always going to be Joe. He's a competitive fighter, and he's a good guy, but under no circumstances can he beat Zhilei Zhang.
Pressure guys don't change much in between fights. Pressure guys stay in character.
For better or worse, London's Joyce has a rematch clause in his contract, but it wouldn't have to happen next if the 2016 Olympic silver medalist activates it. Allowing Zhang to fight someone else next would be a risk, of course, because if Zhang were to lose, the 37-year-old Joyce wouldn't have an opportunity to regain the WBO interim championship from him. I think he'll want to do it next because he's a competitive person, but it's up to his team to protect him, George said. If he wants a rematch, Zhilei would not duck anyone, and he will always fulfill his obligations. If he wants to activate the rematch clause, then we want the rematch as soon as possible.
Neither one of these two guys is a spring chicken. They're both in their late 30s.
If Joyce doesn't want his second shot at Zhang next, the 39-year-old Zhang could become an option for WBC champion Tyson Fury, who could return to the ring as soon as July 22nd at a stadium to be determined in the United Kingdom. Fury, Joyce, and Zhang are all promoted by Frank Warren's Queensberry Promotions, who co-promotes Fury along with Bob Arum's Top Rank. Frank Warren made Zhilei Zhang getting this fight with Joe Joyce contingent upon him entering a multi-fight deal with Queensberry. But if Joe decides he doesn't want to fight Zhang for a second time, not straight away, where does that leave Zhang? Because I don't think Fury's about to fight him.
Fury's name is attached to an Andy Ruiz fight. An Andy Ruiz fight for Tyson Fury is a more winnable fight by and large than a Zhilei Zhang fight.
Who the hell wants to fight a 6'6", 6'7" hard-punching southpaw?
It was a lot of hard work, George said. It was promoters not believing in us and boxing fans not really understanding what was going on behind the scenes. It was a long road. It took us a long time to get here, but Zhilei is actually getting better. He's enjoying himself. I'm excited. I'm happy, and I'm looking forward to seeing what's next.
Not gonna beat Tyson Fury, I don't think.
Tyson Fury's supposed to be part of that four-man tournament in Saudi Arabia later on this year, worth something like, I don't know, $300-400 million. You think he's gonna risk that? Boxing a southpaw, a big one, a strong one, like Zhilei Zhang,
Voluntarily.
when he can box a slow-footed plotter like Andy Ruiz.
I don't know, man.
Zhilei Zhang himself says, I believe that anybody can get hit by my straight left hand.
It's a powerful straight left hand.
The last time we saw Tyson Fury opposite the ring of southpaw was Otto Wallin. And Otto Wallin don't have the punching power of a Zhilei Zhang, but he is a southpaw, and he gave Tyson Fury a lot of problems.
Remember?
It's easy to land the left, Zhang said of his best weapon in an interview with Boxing Social. I hurt Hrgovic with that backhand, and I believe that anybody can get hit by that backhand. They can see it coming, but they can't get out of the way of it. Zhang said he was in tip-top shape heading into the Joyce fight.
Joe Joyce, who's not known for being a defensive wizard, not known for head movement, slipping punches, what he's known for is absorbing them.
What he's known for is having a cast-iron chin. Didn't seem so cast-iron opposite the ring. Zhilei Zhang, who says, I feel like people questioned my conditioning and my stamina after the Hrgovic fight, but for me, I had such a successful training camp, Zhang said. My conditioning trainer and my boxing trainer stayed on top of it. I know that Joe Joyce wanted to take this fight to deep waters and drown me, but I'm here. You can drown me whenever you want, but I'm ready for 12 rounds.
He was.
Far cry from the Zhilei Zhang that we saw in the Jerry Forrest fight. 4 fights later, Zhang was ready for Joe Joyce.
And if Joe decides he don't want to run it back straight away, I think it's going to be hard for Frank Warren to match him.
Generally speaking, you don't want to have to face a hard-punching southpaw.
Especially not if there's not a whole lot of money involved to warrant the risk.
Frank's going to have to get creative. He's going to have to keep an open mind who he matches Zhilei Zhang against in the event that Joe Joyce decides he don't want an immediate rematch.
And I don't think he does. At least his team might not.
Zhang's not going anywhere. Why run it back with Zhang straight away when you can make a bit of coin and get yourself back in a winner's bracket with Dillian White?
That's what I think he's going to do.
I'm just waiting for an official announcement. And finally, men's light heavyweight news. This weekend, WBA number 1 ranked Croydon's own Joshua Buatsi will make his boxer debut this Saturday at Birmingham's 15,000 capacity Resorts World Arena live on Sky Sports. Joshua Buatsi will face Poland's unbeaten world-ranked contender Stepien, who sports a professional record of 18 wins, no losses with 1 draw, 12 knockouts over 12 rounds. At light heavyweight, Stepien is ranked in 3 governing bodies, number 4 with the IBF, 13 with the WBA, and 14 with the WBO.
This will be Joshua Buatsi's first fight since having parted ways with Matchroom and having had a few choice words for the DAZN platform, limited visibility, all that jazz, and that very familiar narrative.
Joshua Buatsi, upon announcing his recent signing to Boxer, started singing a very familiar tune about the DAZN platform, making this fight a fight of some significance, even if it's not a high-profile opponent.
Or a high-profile fight. If your argument is that you were getting limited visibility on DAZN, now that you're back on Sky, you have no excuse. And what's interesting is that most of Joshua Buatsi's fights were on Sky.
So if he's not a more well-known fighter, if he's not a bigger name, you can hardly blame DAZN for that when he barely boxed on that platform. Most of his fights were on Sky.
And now that he's back on Sky, he'll have no excuse for how good or how bad his numbers turn out to be.
No excuses. Before leaving Matchroom, the story is he was offered a B-Vol fight, offered a Callum Smith fight.
But he turned those fights down because there were strings attached. The story is he was also offered an Anthony Yard fight on the Queensberry promotion side of things, and he decided to go with Sky Sports and Boxer.
I'm of the opinion that Joshua Buatsi didn't actually want the big names or the big fights. He wanted big money for what are not big fights.
That's it.
Ben Shalom and Boxer were willing to offer Joshua Buatsi more money than he was making at Matchroom for what are not bigger fights. Eddie Hearn had matching rights, you understand.
But he let him go. Him and Lawrence Okoli, these two guys that
Boxer may be willing to pay these guys more than Matchroom was paying them, but for Matchroom it didn't make sense because they're not big draws. They're not big ticket sellers. So even though Eddie Hearn and Matchroom did have matching rights, they chose to let them go.
Fuck it.
If Ben Shalom is willing to pay Joshua Buatsi more than Eddie is,
fuck it.
Knock yourself out. But at some point, you're going to need a return on that investment, and it's questionable whether or not they can get it because look at who he's fighting.
Well, Stepien.
What's that costing you? There's no Bivol on the Boxer side of things, no better beef, no Anthony Yard.
No big names, no big fights.
You're paying this guy. You're paying Joshua Buatsi. Whatever you're paying him to fight who?
Paying him more than Matchroom was.
I think most people would agree that Dimitri Bivol, Callum Smith, they'd be favorites to beat Joshua Buatsi. He probably wouldn't beat those guys, which leads me to believe that if he went to Sky, it's to seek refuge from those guys while still earning a good wage. That Sky's willing to pay you all this money, minimal risks. He got while the getting was good, as they say. But how long is the getting going to be good over there at Sky Sports and Boxer?
It's not sustainable.
I can care less that Ben Shalom is willing to pay Joshua Buatsi in excess of his market value, but because he's paying him in excess of his market value, that's not sustainable.
Can't do that forever.
How long will it be before Joshua Buatsi starts talking about fights with Matchroom fighters and Queensberry fighters?
That's where the big names at light heavyweight are, not at Boxer.
The fights that people want to see at light heavyweight, they involve Matchroom fighters, Queensberry fighters.
At light heavyweight they do.
We'll see what kind of metrics and what kind of interest Joshua Buatsi can muster up with this Stepien fight, and it behooves him to perform.
Perform well.
You're back on Sky Sports. You ain't got the zone to use as a crutch for your lack of notoriety.
Ben Shalom is promoting you now. It's up to him to make you a household name.
It's up to him to make your fights and try to make you a star. It's up to him.
For fighting the Stepiens of the world, you better knock that fucking guy out. You better win, and win in good fashion.
Because if you have a ho-hum showing, it'll be that much more obvious that neither Eddie Hearn, Matchroom, or the DAZN platform were holding you back.
Excuses.
It'll be that much more obvious that those are just lame excuses to avoid hard fights.